The table provides a comparison between department stores and online stores in Australia in 2011, focusing on four aspects: the number of businesses, profit, sales revenue, and growth rate. Overall, while online stores far outnumbered department stores in terms of business quantity, the differences in profit and sales revenue were relatively moderate. Additionally, online stores experienced slightly higher growth. In terms of the number of businesses, online stores were significantly more prevalent, with 368 compared to just 67 department stores. Interestingly, despite having far fewer businesses, department stores still managed to generate a comparable profit of AUD 807 million, only slightly lower than the AUD 863 million earned by online stores. Regarding sales revenue, online stores achieved a total of AUD 13,400 million, which was only marginally higher than the AUD 12,700 million from department stores. However, when it comes to growth, online stores had a slight advantage, with a growth rate of 0.6%, whereas department stores grew by 0.4%. The provided diagram illustrates how electricity is generated from coal. Overall, the process includes several key stages, beginning with coal mining and culminating in power delivery to households and industries, with waste heat being a byproduct at various stages. The first step involves coal being mined at extraction plants. The mined coal subsequently undergoes crushing, breaking it down into finer pieces. These crushed coal fragments are then transported to a gasifier, inside which combustion occurs at elevated temperatures in order to convert the coal into gas. After this phase is complete, the produced gas proceeds to a separate facility for cooling, with excess heat released as waste. Once cooled, the gas undergoes a cleaning stage whereby any impurities are removed. The purified gas then becomes the input for a gas power plant. Within the power plant, electricity is generated and distributed for domestic and industrial use. It is worth noting that even at this final stage, additional waste heat is still discharged as a byproduct. The graph compares four different types of transportation in the UK based on the amount of goods they transported from 1974 to 2002. Overall, it is clear that the figures for most forms of transportation increased, except rail, which remained quite stable. Furthermore, roads were always the most popular, whereas pipelines were the least. The data for roads increased quite steadily from 70 to around 100 million tons during the given period, except for a few occasional small decreases. Both water and rail started at 40 million tons in 1974. However, in 2002, the former grew by more than 20 million tons, while the latter remained at the same level, despite fluctuations between 1978 and 1994. Finally, like that of roads, the quantity of goods transported by pipelines also rose continuously from about 5 to over 20 million tons after 28 years. Thus, this mode of transportation saw an approximately fourfold increase. Despite being the fastest growing, it was still the least popular of the four. The two pie charts illustrate the academic qualifications of employees in an advertising firm in the years 1990 and 2010. Overall, master's degree in science remained the most common qualification in both years. However, while the proportion of first degree in science rose significantly by 2010, qualifications in the arts, particularly at the doctoral level, declined. In 1990, master's degree in science was the highest qualification held by 27% of the staff. Doctor's degree in science followed at 18%, while the percentages for master's and doctor's degrees in arts were 15% and 12%, respectively. First degree qualifications were less common, with only 18% in science and 10% in arts. By 2010, the percentage of employees with a master's degree in science remained unchanged at 27%, whereas first degree in science saw a significant increase to 24%. Master's degree in arts also rose to 23%, while the figures for doctor's degree in arts fell to 7%. The percentage of staff with doctor's degree in science remained the same at 12%. The given table provides data on New Zealand's population between 2011 and 2012, segmented by age. Overall, it can be seen that New Zealand's population underwent an upward trend but showed signs of demographic aging, with the groups of teenagers to adults experiencing a decline, whereas the opposite pattern was true for the senior inhabitants. Additionally, the 65-plus cohort witnessed the most significant growth of all. Regarding the adolescent group, there was a marginal drop of roughly 1.800 individuals in 2012, which was equivalent to a 0.2% decrease from the initial count of 890.160. Similarly, a comparable declining percentage can be observed in the adult age bracket 15–39-year-olds, whose size was twice that of the former. Looking at the 40–64 category, its figure grew by approximately 8,000 in 1 year, representing a 0.6% increase from 1,331,907. Meanwhile, the 65-plus cohort comprised a substantial 4.0% growth, or nearly 26,000 individuals, 6 times greater than the former group and 20 times higher than the remaining cohorts. Generally, the total population of New Zealand saw a net increase of close to 30,000 people, reaching 4,410,284 in 2012, equating to a 0.6% rise. The diagram illustrates the construction and working principle of a basic filtration system used to purify impure water and make it suitable for drinking. Overall, the process involves 3 main filtering materials arranged in layers within a container, which gradually remove contaminants from the water before it is stored in a separate clean water storage tank. Initially, impure water is poured into a container from the top. Inside this container, there are 3 layers of filtering substances arranged from bottom to top: gravel at the bottom, followed by charcoal, and sand on top. As the water flows downwards due to gravity, each layer plays a role in filtering out contaminants and particles from the water. Gravel helps to trap larger debris, charcoal removes chemical impurities, and sand filters out finer particles. After passing through all 3 layers, the now filtered water exits the main container through a hose or pipe attached to the side. This clean water is then transferred into a separate drinking water storage tank, from which it can be easily accessed through a tap at the bottom. The chart provides information about the frequency of trips taken by men and women within a year in a certain European nation. Overall, while traveling to work clearly dominates for men, women show a greater inclination towards trips for shopping. Participation in the other activities is more evenly distributed between the 2 genders. In terms of work-related travel, there is a noticeable difference between the sexes. Men significantly outnumber women, with figures exceeding 325 trips annually, yet women embark on just over 200 work-related excursions. In contrast, shopping trips exhibit a reverse trend. Women surpass almost 100 trips compared to their male counterparts. Looking at social and leisure activities, the numbers are relatively parallel between the 2 genders. The data for day trips reflect the least variation in travel activity, with both men and women choosing this activity the least throughout the year, and the numbers for each gender remaining closely aligned, which is under 50 trips a year. The line graph compares the proportion of global production contributed by Asia, Europe, and the rest of the world from 1840 to 2000. Overall, Asia remained the leading contributor to global manufacturing despite a noticeable decline in its share. While both Asia and Europe experienced a downward trend over time, other regions saw significant growth, especially towards the end of the period. In the earlier years, Asia accounted for the largest proportion of global manufacturing, although its share declined gradually from around 50% in 1840 to roughly 40% by 2000. Europe, meanwhile, witnessed a steady increase in its production share in the first half of the timeline, peaking before starting a gradual decline that brought it down to approximately 30% at the end of the period. In contrast, other parts of the world, which initially contributed the least, experienced substantial growth. Their share of global production tripled, surpassing Europe towards the end of the 20th century and reaching over 30% by 2000. This upward trajectory marked a clear shift in the global manufacturing landscape. The provided bar chart depicts the percentage of individuals in the UK who included 5 portions of fruits and veggies in their daily diet from 2001 to 2008. The data is divided into 3 categories: children, men, and women. Overall, all groups showed an upward trend in their consumption. Women consistently had the highest proportion, followed by men and children, throughout the surveyed period. At the start of the course, less than a quarter of UK women ingested 5 servings of fresh produce in one day. However, this figure steadily grew over the years and hit a peak at 35% in 2006 before dropping to exactly 30% in 2000. Regarding children, their percentage remained relatively stable in the first 3 years at approximately 12.5%, and a similar pattern was observed in the men bracket during the same period, with their proportion remaining around 17.5%. Over the following 3 years, men witnessed a significant growth of nearly 10% and peaked at 27.5% in 2006, whereas, in the same years, the children group slightly increased and did not reach its highest point until 2007 at about 26.5%. Towards the end of the inspected duration, both men and children groups underwent a minor decline and ended at 26% and 24%, respectively. The two floor plans illustrate the room arrangements designed for training sessions with no more than 10 participants and with more than 10 participants. Overall, the major differences between the two layouts lie in the seating arrangements, the placement of the presenter's chair and whiteboard, and the location of the morning tea area. Plan A is structured for a more compact, interactive session, while Plan B accommodates a larger group with more dispersed seating and rearranged facilities. In Plan A, the seating is organized in a U shape with chairs on 3 sides, allowing all participants to face the presenter directly. The presenter's chair is positioned at the front of the room, to the left of the whiteboard, and the morning tea area is located at the rear. This setup promotes interaction and ensures that everyone has a clear view of the whiteboard. By contrast, Plan B modifies the room to suit a bigger audience. 2 rectangular tables are used, each surrounded by chairs on all sides. The presenter's chair and whiteboard have been repositioned to the bottom of the room, creating a different focal point. Notably, the morning tea area has been moved closer to the entrance and is now set along the top wall, possibly to accommodate the larger number of attendees and improve flow within the room. The bar chart compares the amount of money allocated by 5 organizations to 4 categories: machinery, building, staff training, and research. Units are measured in millions of dollars. Overall, there are significant differences in investment patterns among the organizations. While some organizations, such as Organization B, allocated most of their funds to a single category like building, others, like Organization C, distributed their investments more evenly across the 4 categories. In detail, Organization B had the largest investment in building, spending over $1.8 million, which was the highest figure recorded among all categories and organizations. Similarly, Organization A invested heavily in staff training, contributing $1.6 million, followed by Organization D with approximately $1.4 million in the same category. Organization E focused primarily on machinery, with around $1.5 million allocated to this area. On the other hand, Organization C showed a more balanced distribution of funds across all 4 categories, with investments ranging between $0.8 and $1.2 million. Additionally, research received the least funding overall, with no organization allocating more than $1.2 million to this category. Organization E, while prioritizing machinery and building, allocated significantly less to staff training and research, making it one of the most selective organizations in terms of investment focus. The table illustrates the proportion of employed men and women in 4 different sectors in one country in the years 1986, 1996, and 2006. Overall, the most notable trends are the decline in the percentage of both men and women working in the manufacturing industry and the consistently high proportion of women employed in education. Meanwhile, employment in catering and banking showed varying degrees of gender balance and slight fluctuations over the period. In catering, the percentage of employed men increased significantly from 16% in 1986 to 22% in 1996, and then remained stable in 2006. Women consistently held a higher percentage in this field, maintaining 26% throughout the period. In banking, male employment nearly doubled from 11% to 20% between 1986 and 1996, with a marginal increase to 21% in 2006. Similarly, the percentage of women working in banking rose gradually from 12% in 1986 to 19% in 2006. In contrast, the manufacturing sector saw a steady decline for both genders. The proportion of men employed in this area dropped dramatically from 32% in 1986 to just 17% in 2006. A similar trend was observed for women, whose figures fell from 18% to a mere 6% over the same period. On the other hand, education remained a female-dominated sector, with the percentage of women increasing slightly from 33% in 1986 to 38% in 2006. Male participation in education remained relatively low, rising only marginally from 13% to 15%.